Okay, so hello everybody. I really appreciate you taking the time. We're going to roll through this and be respectful of your time and try to be done here in about 25, 30 minutes. Leave a little bit of time for questions. So we're so glad you're here for today's session, which is new ADA rules for websites, what every business and nonprofit needs to know. So like, there's a lot of rumors, innuendo, and when the words ADA compliance come around and web accessibility, it can be sort of intimidating, overwhelming. And so our goal is to kind of simplify. It's to kind of give you some tactical tools today, but also to make you understand what's going on. And we've brought Eric Dingler, who's not only my good friend, but also an expert in this, Eric Dingler with In Transit Studios. And he's been studying what needs to be done in order to be compliant with ADA websites. And then, he's also legally blind. So he has that. He understands what people are struggling with when they don't have accessibility. So he has a sort of a unique insight into that. So Eric, thank you. Let's start with that, for taking the time to do this today.
Hey, Kirby, thank you. Accessibility. This is one of the things. Last week, I was talking to somebody, and she's like, "Well, what's the first thing people should do?" And I said, the first thing people need to do, I think, is understand that accessibility should come from the perspective of let's make our company, let's make our brand a good neighbor to our community, and not look at as this is something I have to do to meet legal compliance. And
Right.
so I think just stepping back and saying, wait a second, let's be a good neighbor here. And so, so having the opportunity to share this and talk to more people about it, I really appreciate it, Kirby.
Absolutely. So let's just start. Let's start from the kind of the 10,000 foot view. Why is there a renewed focus on ADA and websites? And what's changed recently that businesses and nonprofits, profit leaders need to know about?
Sure. So the Americans with Disabilities Act been around a long time. It is about equal access to services. A lot of people think it's equal access to places, but it's equal access to services.
Okay.
And in 2024, the Department of Justice came out with some new regulations that say, hey, if there is any money from the government being spent to provide a service, if that service is being provided by a state, a business, a nonprofit, a local, doesn't matter, your web content must be accessible or you can no longer use federal money. And this is significant. So even if you're a private company, but you contract with a city to provide transportation or garbage collection, your contract is going to be null and void in next April 2026 or April 2027, depending on the size of the population. And so this is all about what's Title II of ADA that covers private entities. Well, the Department of Justice has said we're actually going to be coming out with some higher regulations and standards for Title III, which is businesses. So there's new things in the work, but this is causing a lot of people to suddenly go, wait a second, I've got to get some things put together here because I don't want to lose my funding. I don't want to lose a contract. And so, so that's kind of where we are. And so now everybody is a little more aware of it. A lot of people are talking about it. And then the final thing is there's been a significant increase in lawsuits for people who their web content isn't accessible.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned the date, so I just want to hammer in on that. So it's not today, right? I just want to clarify. You said April of 2026, where it's going to hit a lot of organizations. Is that accurate?
Yeah. If you have a population that you serve that's greater than 50,000, you have until April 2026. If it's smaller than 50,000, you have until April 2027. So even if you're a small, like a lot of little townships have websites. Every local government agency has a website, and they use those websites for people to access their services. But this goes beyond websites. This includes your websites, your emails, your social media content. If you have PDFs that people download, all of it, all web content that is leveraged to talk about, promote, or let people learn about or give access to a service has to be in compliance for if you fall under Title II. And there's a lot of confusion. A lot of people say, well, this doesn't apply to me because I have less than so many employees, or I don't have enough revenue. That's only Title I, which deals
Mm,
with employment. Title
mhm,
II and Title III, which is equal access to service, the only exception is if you're a religious organization or if you're a private club. If you're
mm.
a private hunting club, a private quilting group, if you're a private group or a religious organization, you're exempt. Everybody else, I don't care if your revenue is $5 a month or $5 million a month, you have to get this taken care of.
So real quickly, I mean, I think a lot of people think of ramps and elevators when they hear about the ADA, but how does the ADA apply to websites and digital experiences? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so those things give equal access to a physical property. Well,
Mhm.
websites are the same thing. Your website and your digital content, and so most people think of people with vision impairments, legally blind, like I am, or totally blind. But there are a lot of types of disabilities. In fact, in the United States, 20% of the population have some level of disability that
Hmm.
impacts them using a website, or reading their email, or engaging in social media. And so, people, almost every website is built to be used with a mouse or the trackpad on an iPad.
Right.
And there's a significant number of people they can't do that. They
Mm,
leverage the keyboard only or voice commands, or they may use a mouse stick if they're totally paralyzed. There are people who are deaf. And so if you have videos on your website, but no closed captioning, no transcription, you've just eliminated that very close knit community.
mhm.
And Forms. A lot of people struggle. A lot of people with disabilities struggle with forms. That's something that we see, and so you want to leverage what's known as universal design. So there's some basic standards. They're universal. They're actually global standards, that every government, pretty much every government that has some level of accessibility requirement, all refer to these standards.
Okay. Okay. So I think sort of one final question before we start talking about solutions is just I think you mentioned blind and deaf. So I think a lot of people assume that this is just for those folks who are blind and deaf, but it actually affects more people than that, right?
Yeah, that's really good. And even because one of the things I hear from people, the pushback is they'll go, oh, you know, I don't know if I need to, bother with this. Somebody, for example, has a driving school.
Mhm.
None of my customers are going to be blind. Well, I understand, but two things. One, it's the people that have to live with the disability that are bothered. Okay, so
Right.
we're not the ones being bothered by providing the accessibility, by making accommodations. But the second thing is, uh, I'm legally blind, but my children aren't. And so, what if I'm doing research to help one of my kids? And
Mm,
so, I have the right, or a blind parent has the right to have equal access to that driving school's information. And so, it also covers, like, let's say there's a parent at home. They're a single parent and they have
mhm.
a splitting migraine, but their kid also has an assignment due at school tomorrow, or there's a form that's got to be filled out for a school field trip or something like that. Like, something has to happen online, which so much of our life does.
Yeah.
And so the school sends this form, or a company or
Mhm.
whatever sends this form, and you've got this parent with this splitting migraine headache. They're a single parent, so they're in a dark room, but they've got the brightness turned down as low as it can. Well, if you have dark text on a dark background, like, now they can't read that. There's not enough contrast ratio.
Right.
So people with migraines, there are people that have even cognitive, people that are dyslexic. that,
Mm,
they'll have the website or what email or social media content read to them.
mm,
So there's all types of
yeah,
disabilities. There's one group of people, they use screen readers because every time they see a certain letter, that letter actually makes them have a smell. So imagine every time you saw the letter
interesting.
C, you had an intense smell of, burning garlic.
Mm,
Like, you would do everything you could throughout the day not to see the letter C. Um,
interesting.
yeah, and so it's a broad spectrum of that's why it's 25% of people are impacted by
Yeah.
some level of accessibility online.
Which is why some of this work needs to be done. And so I want to sort of shift to the what can we do about it kind of part of the conversation. So if someone wants to do a quick check of their own website, like no fancy tools or anything, what are a few easy things they can try today?
Couple things right off the bat. Go to your website, and as soon as it loads, press the tab button on your keyboard. If when you do that, the very first thing that should happen is in the top left, you should get a button that opens up that says skip to content. If that doesn't happen, your website is not keyboard navigational setup. And so that's step one. Step two, scroll to the very bottom of the website and see if you have a link to a website accessibility statement. If not, you've definitely got some room for improvement there. Do you have any video on your website that automatically plays? If so, that's a big no-no in accessibility, because there are people that may have that may have epilepsy, and
Mm,
so if suddenly there's something moving that they're not expecting, that could trigger their epilepsy. So there's a lot of things there you gotta there's a couple things right there that people can look at. And then the last one I would say is open your phone on your computer, or on your open your website on your phone, and just turn on on your phone settings, go to accessibility, and turn on the accessibility voiceover. On iPhone, it's voiceover. On Android, it's like talk to me. And then try to just use your finger and close your eyes and navigate your website,
mm.
because a lot of people are doing that, and you'll very quickly see that, wow, my website or my app or whatever, is impossible for people to access it using the built-in accessibility features on a smartphone.
Okay, that's good. Those are some tactical things people can do right away. But we've been talking about, okay, we have to do this, right? But let's talk about the benefits. I mean, what are the upsides for business and nonprofits that prioritize accessibility?
All right. There are several. There are several.
Okay.
And it really comes back to this idea of universal design. A lot of people in accessibility will use the classic example of a sidewalk curb cut. All right. So you all see curb cuts out and about, in your town, and even Coshocton's got curb cuts everywhere, and
Mhm. Sure.
so everybody's got curb cuts. Curb cuts came about for people in wheelchairs, so that
Mhm.
people in wheelchairs would have equal access to services around town. Well, when you watch those curb cuts, you'll see a lot of people benefit from those.
Mm.
Parents with strollers, delivery drivers making deliveries, bicyclists,
Great point.
elderly people with canes. That those big steps would be a lot. This is called universal design. When you do something that benefits universally people it wasn't even intended to benefit. So when we do your website with this mindset, or you start to work on anything with your business and this mindset, you're going to get several benefits. So what are they for web content? Well, your SEO is going to improve.
Mm.
So your website is going to rank better on Google. So you're going to get seen more before your competitors that don't do this.
Mhm.
Every single website we do remediation on, where we adjust it to make it meet accessibility standards, 100% of the time we see an increase in conversion.
Hmm.
More people click the buttons because buttons, one of the things you can do when you look at your website, if
Hmm.
your buttons say click here, and that's the only thing that's highlighted, or even when you're reading, let's say you're reading a blog post and you have a link that says click here, that's in blue, but then after that it says to access this or to see this or whatever. When somebody sees click here, they're not really engaged to do that. But when somebody's listening to the website with a screen reader, the screen reader just says link, click here, and that's it. You know,
Oh.
click here for what? Link,
Hmm.
learn more. Link, find out. Or, open what? So your links have to become more descriptive. And
Interesting.
when you make them more descriptive, you do it in a way that makes it desirable then for people to click on it. Well, now everybody's going to click on it more.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so that's why we see conversions go up, because we simplify the website too. Um, you know, and so that makes the website convert better. So your website's gonna have better SEO. It's gonna convert better. Which is all good. Now on the
Yeah.
business side, the nonprofits don't get this, but on the business side, here's a little a, a tip for you.
Mhm.
Every year in business, you can spend up to, well, you can spend as much as you need to, but to make things accessible. But every year in business, um, for up to 50% of $10,500 spent on accessibility remediation, you can get a tax credit. So if you
Hmm.
spend $10,000 in, redesigning your employee break room, and so you lower the microwave so that if you have an employee in a wheelchair, they can access it, or you put in an automatic door opener, you put in a ramp, you do anything to your physical property, well, you can get up to a $5,000 tax credit. Or if you spend $5,000, you can get a $2,500 tax
Right.
credit. And so if you do this on your website, you've just got a tax credit to improve your SEO, to improve your conversions,
Conversions. Yeah.
right? Because you're going to be doing ADA remediation, accessibility remediation, and the benefit is going to be all of these things. Plus, if you're a business, you just make sure when you work with a web designer, say, hey, I need my invoice to state how much of this was for accessibility. And you give that, and there's a form. I forget the number off the top of my head, but if you Google it, the form comes right up. It's 85 something. But your tax preparer, they take that form, they do it, and boom, tax credit. So that's another benefit for businesses.
Yeah, that's really good. So we've talked about benefits, but on the flip side, for those who decide to ignore it, what kind of risks are they opening themselves up to?
Uh, the first one is law. You are going to get in trouble eventually. There are in 2016 there were 200 like 200 230 lawsuits in the United States,
Mm.
specifically targeting websites. That was several thousand last year.
Mm.
And so there are now law firms that have popped up that they find 10, 12 clients that have different types of disabilities. And then they have paralegals that go out and search for websites that are violating it,
Mm.
um, accessibility, and then they sue. And just Google New York City art galleries accessibility lawsuits,
Mm.
and you'll see that about 2 years ago, hundreds and across the state of New York, hundreds of art galleries all got sued
Mm.
because their website, it was an easy target because art galleries have a lot of pictures. Their pictures didn't have what's called alternative text.
Mm.
And so one law firm, they just sat and paid people to go find the websites, and then they just sued and sued and sued on behalf of like 3 different people. So yeah, so you're going to, and then the other thing is, it is a lot of these disability groups, they're close knit, and so you're going to hurt your brand and reputation.
Mm.
If you're not accessible to somebody that's deaf, well, they're not going to help you out at all. But if on your website, imagine on your website, if you let's say somebody can make an appointment through your website. People can
Mhm.
schedule with me on my website. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to ask, will you need hearing assistance with this? Would a sign language interpreter, or we can get a sign language interpreter, or we can use a video app that does instantaneous translation, so they can type in and I can, and so if you provide that level of accommodation, the first time a deaf person sees that, they're going to let all their deaf friends know.
Yeah,
And so
that makes sense.
if you're the attorney in town, if you're the pizza shop, if you're the plumber, if you're the whatever it is that is accessible to people with hearing impairments or cognitive impairments or whatever, well, they're going to tell all of their friends, and you've just picked up an entire client base there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Um, that's a really good point. Okay, so let's say that someone's been listening to this. You've won them over, Eric. Okay, I believe that I need to do this. I see the benefits for doing it. I don't want to get sued. What if they want to start thinking about this seriously? What's the smartest first step they can take today?
Okay, they need to do an audit. And the thing is, just realize what you're wanting to do is you want to create a picture of where you are, and then come up with a plan for remediation.
Yeah.
And you have options, unless you get sued. If you get sued, you have 30 days. And I'm telling you right
Mm,
now, it can be very expensive to have to do this very quickly.
yeah.
I have seen this run tens and tens of thousands of dollars,
Mhm.
for places to have to do this very quickly. But if you can show that you're working in good faith and you're in progress and you're doing a little bit here and a little bit there, the courts give you all kinds of latitude for that. People with disabilities applaud you and celebrate, and they're like, okay, thank you for trying. Like,
Right.
that means a lot to me. And so a lot of times, you can either tackle it all at once, or you can come up with, like, some of our people, we have a couple clients where we have a 3-year plan,
Mm,
and it's like just a little bit here, a little bit
yeah,
there, and stuff like
makes
that.
sense.
So to kind of get a picture of where you are, you can let me know, and I'll gladly create an audit for you. We create what is called a lightning audit. It's a free audit. But you can also go to accessscorecard.com. A lot of S's in the middle of that. Access Scorecard. So you got 3 S's there in the middle. Accessscorecard.com. And it's a self-assessment. Takes 5 to 10 minutes. It's going to ask you several questions. It's also going to ask you a few questions about your business, like, do you do any healthcare? Can people buy something on your website? Do you do more than $10 million a year or $2,000 an ad? And right there, some people go, wait, why does that matter? Because those law firms that are predatory, suing companies, what they do is they go create a list of businesses in an area doing more than $10 million a year or spending more than $2,000 a month on advertising. And Kirby, as a marketer as well as me, anybody can go out and buy those kinds of marketing lists.
Right.
Well, attorneys buy those marketing lists, but instead of targeting them for services, they go look at their websites, because if you're doing more than $10 million a year, they think easy pickings. You're just gonna fork over the money.
Right.
And so those questions on accessscorecard.com, at the end, it's going to give you a risk score,
Mm,
and a low, medium, or high. And then it's going to take into account kind of where your website is, how big of a target you have on you, and then it kind of lets you know how fast you have to do some of this stuff. And if you look and your website doesn't have an accessibility statement, you're going to answer that question no. And the very first email you're going to get automatically from me after you do Access Scorecard is going to be a template to a website accessibility statement. Take it, you're going to edit it, you're going to give it to your web service and say, or web person, and say, make this a page on my website, and put a link in the footer. And right there is going to be an amazing first step.
that's awesome. Okay. Well, this is great. We covered a lot of ground in a quick period, just like you promised. So thank you, Eric. I really appreciate you taking the time. This can be, I think, a little bit overwhelming. One of the reasons I brought Eric on is as I started to dig into this, I'm like, I'm not the expert. And Eric and I have known each other for a long time, and he is studying this. He is the one doing this work. And so we've partnered with In Transit. We're not the if you are going to do a project like this, we're gonna send you to Eric. We're not going to do it because it takes someone who's an expert in the field to do it. So again, this isn't something you have to fix everything overnight, but start by using the website accessibility self-assessment tool. I
Yeah,
hope that you
access
go ahead.
scorecard. Access scorecard.
Access scorecard
.com. Yep.
.com. And so, yeah, thank you, Eric, for clarifying. And if you found this helpful, please, if there's somebody in your organization or somebody you know who you think, oh, this ought to apply to them, please feel free to share this information with them as well. So, Eric, thanks, man. Appreciate you doing this.
Thank you. It was I really anytime I get to talk about this, it's always an honor because, like I said, this is about being a good neighbor to the people in your community that need people to go, I'm going to make sure you have access to our services. So what a way to be a great neighbor to in your community.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to differentiate yourself in the competition, as you so eloquently said. So thank you if you are listening for taking the time today. Eric, again, thank you. And if you have any other questions about this, I'm sure you can reach out to Eric. Do accessscorecard.com today. And then if you have any questions, reach out to Eric. Or you can reach out to me and I will put you in touch with Eric. So again, thanks for taking the time, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.